Today we have a very special guest, Mrs. Hayashi. Miss Hayashi. Excuse me. What would you make these mistakes? Okay. She has a Bachelor of Architecture, or Bachelor of Technology with the Architecture from University of Tokyo. Has a master's degree also at the University of Tokyo. And she has obtained Ph.D. in Policy Studies at National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies in Japan. And today she's going to discuss the topic of population problems, which includes migration, health, population, and development. And I think in one of our committees we have a very comprehensive discussion on migration, mainly focusing on refugee crisis, not just in Syria, but also around the world. This topic for me is very interesting, particularly in Japan, where we have a problem with aging population, and as you well know, that 2 weeks ago there was an earthquake in Kumamoto, and I'm from there, and my grandparents live there on their own, and I'm starting to realize the serious problem with the population aging, and the fact that I have to be in Tokyo and I have to be in Moscow where I live, and while my grandparents having to look after themselves, which is already difficult for them. So I take this problem seriously at heart, and I'm really looking forward to what you have to share with us. And I think we all should pay close attention to this particular topic, provided that in these 7 countries we have a lot of problem with migration movement as well as the aging population. So I'll leave the floor to you, Ms. Hayashi, and we'll take the questions at the end.
Thank you, Mr. Harada-san. And then I give you deepest condolences to your grandparents who is in Kumamoto. And also yesterday I talked with an old friend of my parents who are living in Kumamoto, and then she's actually 80 years old. She's living alone. She was staying on the 10th floor of the apartment in the middle of, in just the center of Kumamoto city. But when there is an earthquake, then normally she has this problem of walking, but then because of the earthquake, she just had this energy of going down from the apartment to evacuate from people, but she used the elevator and she got stuck on the 3rd floor, and now she is staying in a kind of evacuation center, and she's coming back, so we are going to buy her the microwave and the necessary things which is no more in use in her apartment because everything go down. But anyway, that is exactly the old people living alone. That is one of the typical situation in Japan, and that is what is my topic today. But I have the time until 12:30 or 30 minutes from now? 12:30. 30 minutes from now, so I have 5 minutes more. So I'd like to limit my talk so that we can discuss afterwards. So I'd like to go very quickly. And what is not written in the brochure which you have, my affiliation is National Institute of Population and Social Security Research, which is located in Tokyo, Japan, in front of Hibiya Park. And this is a national institute, and we produce the future population projection of Japan, and also we conduct national surveys on migration and family and fertility. And also we produce the cost of social security, so we depend on the Ministry of Health, Labor, Welfare. So today my topic is going to be population aging, Japan, G7 countries, and the world. The next slide, please. This is not only G7, but world population. And some of the people still think that world population is still exploding, but however, it is still increasing. But for example, the young people, 0 to 14 years old, here it is blue color, it has started increasing already around 2000. It's going to be stable. And then the portion which is increasing is the red portion, 15 to 64. But the most part which is now increased rapidly is the aged population from 65 years and older. This is the global situation. And next slide, please. And when we see, anyway, the aging population is increasing, but when we see the trend, that population dynamics, this is sometimes we often use this dependency rate. This is all the G7 countries and world. What is dependency rate? We calculate the number of young and elderly on the top and divide it by the working age population, 15 to 64. So the higher this dependency rate is, the higher there are the more dependent people. If here, this dependent people defined as 0 to 14 and 65 plus, and then this is highly arguable because in Japan, 65 years old, they are still young and many of the people are still working. But anyway, this is how we define the dependency ratio. And when you see it, the red color with, sorry, I don't have pointer, but we have already hit the bottom at the 1970s, through the 1970s to 1990. And this is during the time when we enjoyed the demographic dividend, the population bonus. And then since then, it is keep on increasing. And now we have the highest dependency ratio among the G7. But this is not only Japanese problem or situation, but all the other G7 countries, it has more or less the same trend. But even when we saw the world, which is seen, it is shown here with brown color with X, already this year, or since 2010, the world dependency ratio hit the bottom. And so this is now, even seen with the global level, the world has come to the lowest dependency ratio. And then now this is the time that we are enjoying the global demographic dividend, and the global aging is going to start. Or it will be global phenomena of aging. The next slide, please. So right now, Japan has the world highest aging ratio when we define the aging ratio as the proportion of people aged 65 plus. And now it is 27%. 1 in 4 persons in Japan are aged more than 65 years old. And when we see the population since 1920, when we first had the population census, it went up to 2010. And last year we had a population census. That was the first time we record the population decline. And now after that we're going to have the population decline. So every year we are now having the population decline of 300,000 people. And then now this is real phenomena for us. And then it is a very steady trend. And when we see the yellow line, it is the proportion of the elderly people, and it keep on increasing until it will reach about 40%. And as you can see, the young people, 0 to 19 years old, it has been stopped growing around 1960, and now it is the aged people is keep on increasing, and especially the age old from 75 years old is increasing. The next slide, please. And when we see this population trend, we have to see the population is made out of the birth, which is introduced to the population, and then the subtraction is the death, and then the difference is migration. So there are 3 components: birth, death, and migration. The first, this is the trend of the death and birth in terms of total fertility ratio, which is now shown on the pink line with right scale. And it used to be rather high, around 5 babies per couple in the before the war. And since after the Second World War, there is a sharp decline. And then after that, there is a smooth decline, and then hit the bottom 2005, when the total fertility ratio was 1.27, very low. But since then it is slightly moving up. And when we see the mortality, there are several indicators to show the mortality. But when we see the infant mortality rate, which is shown here in blue color, it's been declining rapidly since 1920, and then it was very low already in the 1960s. And on the contrary, when we see the life expectancy, the average length of the lifespan, it is colored in the green color, and then it is increasing slowly and steadily. And even though we have now the highest, we are very aged, but still the life expectancy is increasing, keep on increasing. So the next slide, please. So the very low fertility in Japan, is it only in Japan? No, it is also shown in other G7 countries. This is the total fertility rate of 7 countries. So Japan is always red line with round, and it is very low, but also in Germany and Italy, it has the same situation. The different situation is mainly in USA and France and UK, and Canada is in the middle. And it is interesting that especially in France used to be having a very low, well, it has the low fertility concern during the 19th centuries, and it has a long history of pro-fatalistic pro-natalistic policies, and then already it has come to a low level, or compared to Japan it is higher, but it's going up, and then now it's achieved to the replacement level. When we say 2.1, total fertility rate is 2.1, then we say that it is replacement level, because from the 2 persons, one couple have 2 persons, and then when two persons have 2 babies, then the population will be stabilized. Why 2.1? Because somebody just died until it comes to they become the age of getting married and having children. So globally, or among the G7, there are different trends of fertility, and Japan is not the only one. But Germany, somebody from Germany, and then from Italy, and then we have also hello. And it's interesting that, well, when with these 3 countries we are Axis during the Second World War. But anyway, the next slide, please. So this is the G7 life expectancy. So when we only see the G7 countries, it keep on increasing. Actually, the fertility just going up and down, but it depends on people's attitude and also policy. But for the life expectancy or for the mortality, everybody wants to live longer. And then when the social condition is rather stable, there is always this keep on increasing and monotonous trend. So G7 are the lucky countries which we have this steady increase since 1950s. When we see Africa, when we see the post-transition Russia and Eastern European countries, the trend is not like this, but I don't have enough time to discuss this. The next slide, please. And but all the countries, all the G7 countries might have some similar trend, but what is different in Japan is that we are rather poor compared to other G7 countries, and then our change, the society changed since 1950s. It was very rapid. So it is also reflected to the speed of aging. This is the speed of aging, which is defined as the year when our aging ratio becomes 7% to the time when we have the aging ratio at 14%. Japan have the shortest period of time compared to other high-income countries. It was only 26 years when the aging ratio became 7 to 14, compared to 115 years of France and 69 years of United States or 45 years of United Kingdom. So we have to adapt to this very quick aging situation, and so we have done different things, but we are now trying to catch up for the policies, where we are mostly referring to the G7 countries and also Northern European countries. But in the future, there will be middle-income countries, which is now rapidly aging, and then some countries are even quicker aging. So we are now just sharing our experience to the middle-income countries in terms of global, in terms of aging. So the next slide, please. So just a quick two, three facts about Japanese aging is that we are a kind of Asian. We are Asian. Well, we are Asian. And then, and then we have this respect for the elderly culture. In 1970, it was only 50 years ago, 80% of the elderly were living with the children's family. So the children, the aged people were taken care of by the children's family, especially for the son's wife at home. But this proportion just reduced very rapidly, and now there are only 44% who are living with children's family. Instead, there are 16% of people who are living alone, and 34% living only with spouse. So, still 44% compared to other G7 countries, it is large, but still, you see how the Japanese elderly's living arrangement has changed. However, if it is good or bad, when I talked about this statistic with Chinese people told me that, well, this is good because elderly people get independent. Maybe that is right. But we have a lot of challenges when we have to take care of what I have explained in the beginning of my friend who is living 80 years old, living alone in the apartment in case of earthquake, what's happened, and then when they want to receive the care, living alone, and sometimes it is a big challenge. The next slide, please. And but actually, as I said in the beginning, the people at the age of 65, they are still young in Japan. That is because our life expectancy keep on increasing, as well as healthy life expectancy. This is the official figure of the Japanese Ministry of Health, Labor, Welfare. And when you see the female and male, with the increase of life expectancy, with the same level, health life expectancy is increasing. When we define the health as not having the problem for conducting the daily activities. So when we live longer, then we can live healthier. And then what to do? How to do that? How to achieve the active aging? That is one of the policy challenge right now. The next slide, please. However, I have been saying that with G7 countries there is a similar trend, but what is very different, Japan and the other G7 countries, it is the international migration. So this is the data from United Nations Population Division. On this horizontal scale, this is a proportion of migrants in country. For example, around the highest in Canada. Canada have 22% of the population of Canada. They are the foreigners, migrants, those people who are born outside of Canada. And then most of the countries, they have, Italy is low, but they are mostly 10 to 20%. G7 countries except Japan. But Japan, now the ratio is 1.7%. It is very low. This is often said, but also when we see the proportion of each person living overseas, that is, for example, there are 7.5% of British people living outside of Britain. So they move out and then they their mobility is high. And this is rather, the Japan and the US, we are around the same level, and then it is low. It is because our US and Japanese population itself is big, so when we compare the proportion divided by the total population, which makes the proportion low, but still we can say that Japanese population in general, we have less migrants and then we tend to stay inside Japan. So maybe this might be something we can do. Next slide, please. However, we have been very famous that we are close to the outsiders, but with now constant population decline, 300,000 people every year, we don't have this official policy of accepting migrants, but still, in the reality, the number of foreigners are increasing, especially the non-permanent resident here shown in the green color. So the blue color is the total number of foreigners living in Japan, and then there is the big decline after the Lehman shock, followed by the Great East Japan earthquake. But then after that, it soon going up. The number keep on increasing, the foreigners. And when we see the permanent resident, even regardless of Lehman shock or Great East Japan earthquake, there is no decrease and it's keep on increasing. And compared to 20 years ago, we have changed a lot for the policies. For example, we try to let the foreign students studying in Japan who speaks Japanese to promote them to stay in Japan afterwards so that they can find a job and they can stay longer. And also we are increasing the number of naturalization and giving more and more permanent residence. So now the challenge is more like social integration of the foreigners. So our policy is rather like increasing steadily and slowly, but try to continue this slow and steady trend. So the next slide. So this is, I think that you have already seen this thing. This is agenda, the 2030 agenda for sustainable development. And many things are concerned. Actually, people are trying to put aging issue also to this agenda, but aging is not something to resolve. One thing is aging is good because people are living longer. But, so aging is, and the population dynamics is not inside, but actually population is something which is base of all this. It concerns with many targets and goals, and also population is important because it is used to calculate per capita measures. And then also to get the population data, you can have this evidence-based information, and you have to always based on this evidence-based information so that you can just, based on the data, you can analyze and then you can think and act. So this is the end of my talk. Oh, I have some 10 minutes. Looking for your questions and discussion.
Thank you very much. We will now take a few questions. So how we're going to do this is we'll probably take 2 or 3 questions at a time, and then the lecturer can answer to each of those questions. So please raise your hand if you have any questions. Okay, I'll take one from Roxanne and then Alexander.
Thank you very much for the lecture. I thought it was extremely interesting. My question is, essentially, it might sound controversial, but I'm just interested in your thoughts on whether a falling fertility rate for some countries might have beneficial impacts. I say this because often when we talk about aging population and low fertility rates, we think of, oh, this is a problem that we must solve, for instance, through more migration or boosting fertility rate. Is this not, in some ways, quite a short-term solution to the issue for highly dense or densely populated countries like Japan and the UK, where maybe the population, it wouldn't be the end of the world for the population to fall slightly to a more manageable level in the long run?
Can you have your name and
sorry,
country?
my name is Loxanne. I'm with the UK delegation.
Hello. First of all, thank you very much for the very interesting lecture. I'm Alexia, representing the European Union. I have just wanted to ask you, because you were talking about the efforts that Japan is making in terms of policies for migrants, especially. And I was just wondering if you have in mind specific actions, measures, or policies regarding migration and migration to specifically target the issue of aging population. Because that a lot of migrants are, as you said, young people and working age, etc., so they can contribute to the public finance and social system, etc. Thank you.
So thank you for your questions. And then first, for the very long-term view, and then as the life expectancy is increasing, and then some of the people are now talking about telomere, and then there might be some technology to extend the life very long. I used to believe that 120 is the limit, but now people are saying that maybe people can live without any limit and so on and so forth. But if there is no limit for the human longevity, then it means that if we have additional birth, then that will create a population explosion. So in that case, maybe now the low fertility and the longer life expectancy might be the right trend. But this is a very long term, and actually low fertility, it is a problem. And then that is the weakness of Japan, because at the time that already around the 1970s, we are arriving at the fertility rate of 2.1. But at the time, still we are talking about our fertility is still high and we have to lower it. And by the time we have started the policy measures against the low fertility, it's been already 1990s, it was too late. Why? Because there is this traditional belief that the woman should get married and stay at home and raise children. And then with these political kind of traditional ideas, we couldn't move step forwards to create the favorable environment for women to, while working, that they can raise children, and then to put a lot of kindergartens and to give child allowance and to give maternity leave and paternity leave. These are the measures which have been developed almost like in the 21st centuries. And then, well, since last 10 to 20 years. So now we are doing a lot of efforts, but still it takes time. But I'm optimistic because comparing to my generation, when I see the young people, I see many young fathers who is taking care of the babies, especially during the weekend. And then the behavior has changed. But anyway, low fertility, when it is very low, it is not healthy for the population. So we have to do things. And then the longer life expectancy, it is good. And then it is good. And then some people would say that there is the higher you live, and then there are more people who need care, and then who has Alzheimer, who have bedridden. This is also a problem, but this have to be, and then now we have to, in many of your countries, you're talking about this euthanasia thing, the rights to death. And this is also the serious discussion, but also, there are challenges. When we see the population trend, then we used to say we are having too high fertility, we have to lower it. And when it is too low, then we are saying that it is a problem of very low fertility, and we have to raise it. So it's all about the conception, and then there is always good point and bad point, and then we have to see the both sides of the phenomena. And about the international migration, the concrete the policies, for example, before the foreigners were administered from the immigration office, immigration bureau, but since 2012 we have integrated the foreigners in the resident registration as the same as Japanese population, so that the foreigners can receive the appropriate the locals and administrative service, such as in case of disaster, they can have the right information and the registration and social security, health insurance and pension service, pension benefits and so on and so forth. And also we are having this point system, so that those high-skilled people have higher points, and then they can receive the permanent resident status quicker. And also we are granting visas for example, when you come into to the airport or when you entered, maybe you waiver, you didn't need a visa, but we are just expanding this this visa waiver system to many countries, and then that is how we have increased the number of tourists. But also, the visa measures is being now somehow it is more expanded or relaxed. And also we are increasing the social security agreement between countries so that we exchange, we accommodate, for the people living in Japan who are having different social security scheme, they can exchange with Japanese system. And what else? So, and then also there is the bureau, there is an office within the Ministry of Health, Labour, Welfare, which is in charge of promotion of the job employment for the foreigners, and then now they are just promoting the employment. So this, but anyway, we don't have the migration policy to bring in migrants as migrants. We don't call them migrants, we call them foreigners. So this is the difference, and then we don't we don't give the visa for the the simple low-skilled workers, except for the trainees and EPA, Economic Partnership Agreement. But little by little, we are now, for example, care workers, we are now discussing about how to change the visa status. Yes.
I'll have to make one more question. For those of you who are in the Asian society, maybe
African?
Oh, really? Okay, yeah, I'm from Henry Jackson, and yeah, you can.
Hi, I'm Henry Jackson. I'm from Cameroon. I'm from So my question is from your first slide. Can you please go to the first slide? Yeah, if you look at that slide, the population between 0 to 14 years is like constantly dropping down. What would be the main reason for that constant dropping down of that youth population? And what policies do you think can be implemented for that population to increase?
Interesting. Maybe take another question and then
Yeah. Okay. Just one more. Oh no, actually, we don't really have time. Sorry, but we can just if you want to talk later, then it's possible. But we just need to, in the interest of time, we have to keep moving.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. My answer is taking too much time. But thank you for a question. And I was surprised. The fact that the young people is stable is the result of our efforts of limiting the fertility, reducing the fertility, and we are trying to stabilize the population of the world. So we think this is a good thing, and then there is no need to increase further the young people. And because you're from Cameroon, one thing is that all the continents, the region of the world has been having the same trend, reducing the fertility rate and stabilizing towards the stabilization of population, except for Africa. Africa is still having a very high fertility. It is keeping declining, but the pace is slow. So now, with the global population issue, we have to think differently the African case. And for the African population aging, the proportion is still small, but as the African population is increasing rapidly, the speed of, in contrast to the number of aged people in 2010, there will be double aged people in Africa in 2030, which is the same rate as Asia or Latin America. So when we think that population problem, right, the global population problem is the population explosion in Africa. So I wonder that also G7 is trying to just think about these population issues, and then we have this thing in mind. We have to think this thing in mind. Thank you for your question.
Well, thank you very much.